Buckeye Talk video version from cleveland.com. Try the texts. From the 937, what chance would you give Ohio State to go play in the SEC, ACC, or Big 12 if they still play but the Big 10 cancels? Stephen, we'll start with you on this. Ryan Day mentioned it, cracked the door, I think, strategically in an ESPN interview at 5:30 Monday evening. Do you think that is at all realistic that if the Big 10 cancels, Ohio State would still try to play?
No, I'll give it 2% just because it's 2020 and weird things keep happening. But no, and Scott Frost hinted at it too in a video on Twitter. That's not what's going to happen here. That's so many extra steps that would have to happen for any team in the Big Ten or any team in any conference to just switch conferences for a year, just for the simple fact that the rest of my conference doesn't want to play, but I want to play. Even though Ohio State is probably best suited for it because, as we've all said, from a football standpoint, they're an SEC school.
Nathan, do you think it's a real thing or bluster?
I think it's mostly bluster. I think it is more positioning, or I guess the way I read it is more a message to send to the rest of the Big Ten, which is, I think they've tried to speak in a very unified voice throughout this whole process. But I think one of the things that you can kind of glean from the way the last 12, if not 24, 36, 48 hours have gone, is that the Big Ten is not very unified right now on what's going on as it relates to football and coronavirus. And I think it's maybe a message to send that that they are not going to, if Ohio State feels like it's safe for them to play football games, to bring their football players together and let them play football. And frankly, I'm still skeptical that that's going to happen. But if Ohio State thinks that it is, then they're going to move forward with that. And they don't feel like they should have to let other Big Ten programs that maybe don't have the same system set up and haven't given themselves the same chance to play dictate what their season is going to be. Now, do I think there's a lot of other factors that would go against that, such as Ohio State's long-standing ties with the Big Ten and not wanting to create some kind of long rift, such as where does Ohio State really fit into some other conference all of a sudden out of the blue? I mean, I think there's a lot of things why it seems like it would not be a feasible option. But I think it's something that Ohio State and Nebraska and other schools are saying, like, they're not necessarily going to let preemptive fear on August 10th decide what they do between now and still trying to play football this fall.
I don't think the rest of the Big Ten would love to see Ohio State do that. We've talked about today the idea of, and I think there's a difference, a little bit at least, would Ohio State like join a conference or just try to patch together some kind of independent schedule? And for instance, the Mountain West, if people haven't heard this, the Mountain West on Monday evening became the second FBS conference to cancel. BYU, which is an independent, lost 8 games because they mostly play Mountain West teams. So that's like another independent. Notre Dame has gone into a conference for this year as an independent. BYU is looking for 8 opponents now. The idea of Ohio State being independent rather than like going with the conference and trying to patch together, hey, the ACC, they're looking for some non-conference games here and there. Let's add that. I think that makes more sense, but I think it's much more difficult logistically. But I don't know that I would want, if I were the Big Ten, I'm not sure I would want Ohio State sniffing around independence and trying to see how that feels, stretching their legs on, like I just got out of this long-term relationship. I was with this conference for like 110 years, and I'm not really looking to get serious, but I'm kind of just, exploring a little bit, just trying to like check my independence and just, be independent for a while. And you know what? That might feel great. So if I were the Big Ten, I think it's something Ryan Day says. Now, do you think there's a difference between Ryan Day saying it and Scott Frost saying it? The Big Ten being the Ohio State being in the Big Ten forever, and Nebraska being in the Big Ten for 8 years or whatever it's been.
I do think there's a difference because I think Nebraska is still a relative newcomer to the Big Ten. It does not have historic ties that date back 100 years to when this conference had different names. It's a conference. It's a school that, frankly, probably in a lot of its fans' eyes, still has more ties to the Big 12 in some ways than it does the Big Ten.